As you've worked with SketchUp, you may have noticed something we call sticky geometry. Basically, when you move one piece of geometry over another, they tend to stick together. This behavior is key to the way SketchUp works, but sometimes it's just not what you need. The way to keep this from happening is to group geometry together as a unique entity. In SketchUp, there are two ways to group geometry. You can create a group of geometry or a component. In many ways, the two look very similar, so let's take a moment and examine the differences. For this example, I'll select all the geometry of the group. Go to the Edit menu and make a group. Now, all that geometry moves and behaves as one. We'll do the same for the component geometry. Select it and make it a component by clicking on the component icon in the toolbar. Don't worry about the options in the dialog box, we'll cover those later. At first, the two, the group and component, seem the same, showing a larger bounding box indicating this is a unique entity that acts as such. The primary difference comes when you make one or several copies of the object. Watch what happens as we edit and make changes to the group. You can see we can manipulate each group separately. They have no connection to the original or other groups. However, as we edit and change the component, all the components change as well. You see, components are instanced, which means they are all linked to each other, and anything you do while editing a component will be repeated to the other components. As a general rule, anything in your model that's repeated, even once, should be made into a component first. We'll talk more of groups and grouping in a different video. Now, let's look at some of the ways to work with components. When you create a component, you cannot push, pull, move edges, or otherwise manipulate the geometry inside the component. You can only move, rotate, or scale the geometry as a whole. To change geometry inside the component, you must edit the component. Right or context click on the component, choose Edit Component, and you can then make changes as needed. Right or context click outside the component and choose Close Component when finished. Another way to open and close components for editing is with the Select tool. Double-click on the component with the Select tool to start editing. Click once outside the component with the Select tool to close. You can see when you are editing a component by observing the bounding box. It is solid and highlighted when the component is picked, but becomes a dotted bounding box when you are editing. Any components you create are stored in the component library. Access this library through the Window menu. When you open the component library, you can see other components we've created for your use. To see components you've created or added to the model, click on this house icon. Right now this shows our one component. Look through some of the categories to find other components to add to the model. Simply click on a component, then click in the model space to place it in the scene. After adding a few components, click on the house icon to see all the components that have been added to the model. There's a lot more depth to components and the component browser, so look to other videos for more information.